Hey guys, my name is Boris. I'm a board certified physician assistant working in internal medicine and medically supervised weight loss. And today I thought I would do a different kind of video. Today I'm going to react to this podcast by Chris Williamson and Dr. Andrew Huberman, where they talk a lot about something called placebo effect, which, if you haven't heard of it, basically, if you believe something, then you actually physically feel it, and it can actually have physical changes in your body if you actually believe something. So, as a medical practitioner who practices medical weight loss, I think this is extremely powerful, extremely important, and they bring up some really interesting points. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to share my screen. So I'm just going to share my screen and I'm going to play this video, and I'm just going to pause it every few seconds to react to what they're saying. And yeah, let's see what we can see. I think this is really interesting.
That. One of the best books that I've read this year is The Expectation Effect by David Robson. So he is a science writer from the UK, and he looked at a whole bunch of studies, the placebo effect, which everybody's familiar with, right? There is a particular expectation that an outcome is going to come from some sort of medication, and lo and behold, that outcome manifests. He found this across pretty much every area of anything that you care about. So my two favorite studies from this, so interesting. He realized that gluten intolerance, self-report gluten intolerance, has increased from 3% to 30% in 10 years.
So this is why there's so many gluten-free options on the menu?
They've got 30% of the population to serve, yeah, so people need it. And he was wondering, well, what is it? Human biology hasn't changed that much. Is it maybe that the foods have changed and people are responding to that? Or is it maybe some sort of expectation because the type of news stories that are hearing about gluten and about how bad it is for us and inflammation and all this sort of stuff, maybe it's that and people are expecting it. So they brought people into a lab. They sit them down. These people do and do not.
Okay. Just wanted to comment on that really quickly. So first, just a general opinion. Anytime that, people who are not trained scientifically in the scientific method to do experiments, anyone who basically doesn't even have like a bachelor's in bio, chem, physics, just some kind of hard science, I feel like it could be important and it could really change a lot of mindsets and do really good to talk about scientific studies. But on the other side of that, I think that it can really do a lot of damage because a lot of people say, trust the science. And, if it happens to be in a scientific paper and it's painted a certain way that it has to be true. Okay, yeah, maybe not. But what scientists are trained to do, and I'm not like a PhD level scientist, I don't do experiments for a living, I treat patients for a living. But still, I have a BS in biology. I did post-bac work. I did a little bit of research in my graduate work. I am published in a couple of papers as far as my undergraduate work on some projects that I was involved in. I know how to at least do the scientific method and how to question scientific papers and kind of poke holes in them because that's what science does. It's not, this is what we want to prove. This is what we believe. This is what we think might happen. Let's see what happens and objectively look at it. And it's subjected to criticism from lots and lots of other people objectively looking at it. That's what science is supposed to be. It's not really how it's been treated a lot of times lately, unfortunately, by, a lot of different people. But that's what science is supposed to be. That's what science does. It's not, this is what we want to prove. This is what we believe. This is what we think might happen. Let's see what happens and objectively look at it. And it's subjected to criticism from lots and lots of other people objectively looking at it. That's what science is supposed to be. It's not really how it's been treated a lot of times lately, unfortunately, by, a lot of different people. But that's what science is supposed to be, is to find the objective truth as rigorously as possible. So what basically scientists are trained to do is poke holes in every possible piece of proof, in every possible study, in the design of the study, in every argument, X, Y, and Z. So with that being said, what I want to do is poke some holes in this already, where it says, and also I could not find this paper that he's talking about. I found the book. I couldn't find the actual study that he's referencing. Not to say it doesn't exist. I just myself could not find it. So I couldn't see the methods. I couldn't see how many people were in the study. I couldn't see anything to really poke holes in except for this. Just a claim that he's making that gluten intolerance, self-reported, by the way, gluten intolerance, self-reported means people say that they have it. That's it. No physiological testing, no celiac panel, which, there's all kinds of lab tests that we can do to see if you might have gluten intolerance. There's no like biopsies on an EGD, like no physical proof, just self-reported gluten intolerance. has gone up from 3% to 30% in the last 10 years. Okay, let's poke that full of holes immediately just on that claim alone. The main thing that I want to say is he's saying maybe it's because our food has changed, maybe it's more inflammatory, maybe there's more gluten in the food that we're eating, or the gluten is of worse quality, X, Y, and Z, whatever. I'm not even going that far. I'm just saying that maybe because of the fact that we didn't even know what gluten intolerance was 10 years ago, maybe that's why only 3% of people said, like, oh, I get kind of sick when I eat bread or certain things, certain foods. Gluten intolerance just wasn't really something that people knew anything about, so they didn't have a name for it. So of course they couldn't really self-report it. People who think a little bit critically and actually do like food diaries and say, okay, I was really sick on Monday and Wednesday, and that's when I ate a bunch of pasta. Yeah, some people might have said that, but they've never heard of gluten intolerance. So a lot of people who may have had the problem didn't even have a name for it. So of course they didn't really self-report it. And then as it got more and more traction and people knew about it more and more and were talking about it more and more and in the news and the internet, now, of course, there's more self-reporting. So what I basically want to say is maybe the problem had been there all along, and 30% of people 10 years ago really did have gluten intolerance or some level of it, and they just didn't report it because they didn't know what it was. And now that they do, now we might have an actual more accurate figure of how much of the population actually has gluten intolerance. So not saying that they do, not saying all gluten intolerance is legit, or people who say, oh, I'm celiac, I get diarrhea. If all of that is legit, as you'll see later in the video. But what I'm saying is this whole notion of it's gone up from 3% to 30%, and that has to be because of the food or basically because of whatever. I'm skeptical about that. I think maybe it's just because it's been there all along and just didn't have a name. And I feel that same way about a lot of other disorders, especially psychiatric stuff. Like people didn't really talk about anxiety, depression, PTSD, all that kind of stuff 10 years ago, 20 years ago. It doesn't mean that people didn't have it. It's just that they were, almost dropped my food here. It's not that people didn't have it. It's just that they didn't have a name and it wasn't as accepted to talk about it. So people are saying like, we have a mental health crisis right now. Yeah, we do. But it's not to say that it's any worse than it was 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's just that now we're actually talking about it. That's how I feel anyway. But yeah, let's move on a little bit later in the video here.
Not have self-reported gluten intolerances, and they give everybody the same meal. They tell everybody in the room that it's got gluten in it. It's got no gluten in it. After a while, people who don't have a gluten intolerance biologically, who haven't eaten gluten, have diarrhea, they have hives, they're breaking out in inflammation, they're having to run to the bathroom. Okay, well, that's kind of interesting. He did another story that he spoke about, VO2 max tests.
Excuse me. Okay, so I'm not going to get into the VO2 max tests. Not that I don't think it's interesting. I just don't want this video to be super long. And I think he made the point already anyway. Basically, people who did not have any kind of physiologically proven gluten intolerance, but who said that they may have had it, were told that they had, a meal with gluten in it, and they had all these symptoms. They were having diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, whatever they may have, even though the meal did not have any gluten in it. So physically, there should not have been a reaction, but because they believed that they had, an overreaction to gluten, and they believed that they had ingested gluten, that's what gave them the symptoms, which I think is absolutely amazing. Again, I didn't see the study. I don't know if it's really legit, but based on what he's saying, I'm just going to take it at face value in this case. Basically, what he's saying is people believed it, and so it was. Not, they believed it and they became anxious about it, or they believed it and they, became angry, some kind of a psychological response. No, they actually had a physiological response in their body because they believed that they had ingested gluten and that they had a problem with it. That's amazing. I mean, okay, you sitting there right now watching this video, go have diarrhea. Go do it right now. Go have diarrhea. You can't. Your mind can't force you to have diarrhea, except that it can, according to this. So you can't lie to yourself. You can't trick yourself consciously into having these physiologic responses. But apparently, if you believe it wholeheartedly, you don't consciously know that you're lying to yourself or that someone's lying to you. Apparently, your body responds in kind and actually does have the physiologic response. These people who physically ingested no gluten had diarrhea as if they had gluten. What? Like, that's amazing. Okay, next point. I'm going to fast forward to what Dr. Huberman talks about here.
That they were looking at regulate, not have both do really good. Know that overall, actively enough, but wins.
And I think that, a lot read the book.
That said your expectations are even more powerful than your genes.
I love that. I'm going to read the book. That's a remarkable example. And I think that, a lot these days is being made of epigenetic effects and things, but this is almost in the different direction. This is a psychophysiological response. I find this kind of thing, to be honest, among the more fascinating and interesting aspects of neuroscience.
Yeah, me too.
If not the most interesting lately. Those examples are tremendous, so I can't counter those at all with anything more spectacular. But the work of Dr. Aaliyah Crum at Stanford, she runs the Stanford Mind Body Lab, and she's done simple experiments, but they're really elegant, instructing people, one group, all about the terrible effects of stress. Destroys your immune system, et cetera, et cetera.
I'm actually going to fast forward through the stress example and get to the diet example, which I think is fascinating and much more in line with what I do professionally. So let's fast forward this.
Et cetera. Your ability of function, you are told, basically. It's about the subset of information. Two different groups of people, and then they actually each got the opposite condition too, a fat and sugar, et cetera. And then they actually, perhaps the most dramatic was they gave two different groups of people, and then they actually each got the opposite condition too, a milkshake. One group is told this milkshake is very high calorie, it contains a lot of fat and sugar, et cetera. Another group is told the milkshake they're getting is very low calorie, it's very nutrient sparse, et cetera. Then they measure hunger, so how long it takes for them to get hungry again after ingesting it. They also look at insulin, and they also look at ghrelin, this hormone that is secreted as you get, essentially makes you hungry. It's associated with hunger. There are other things too, but you see exactly what you would expect, which is that people that get the nutrient-dense milkshake are satisfied for longer, their ghrelin is suppressed, and their insulin is higher. You see the opposite in the group that had the so-called low-calorie shake. Turns out it's the exact same milkshake. This is remarkable, right? Because this is not simply the placebo effect. I think it's the placebo effect plus the expectation effect plus a real physiological effect, because that's what you describe as well.
And also, sorry for eating. Apparently, my ghrelin is really high. I'm starving. And in case you don't know what ghrelin is, it's a hormone that is made in your stomach and then eventually finds its way to the brain. So it physically makes you feel hungry. It's when you have not eaten, right? That's when you secrete this stuff. And it's when your stomach's empty and it doesn't have a lot to do for an extended period of time. And so what it does is it makes this hormone. It makes you physically in your stomach feel like you're hungry. And then it goes to your brain and makes you think that you're hungry and want to eat and want to go find food. And like the hungrier you are, the more ghrelin you have, the more obsessed you become with going and finding food, because your body's telling you like, look, dude, I am hungry. I'm starving. I need nutrients. I need resources. Go get them. So it's a hormonal response from the stomach that goes to your brain and makes you go do stuff, makes you want to go eat. So of course, in weight loss medicine, this one's kind of important to control the ghrelin and find any way possible to control this ghrelin. It's a hormone. So that's why I just said I'm starving. It's the end of the day. I have not had dinner. This is like the third time I'm recording this reaction because I keep screwing up the Zoom meeting. But anyway, that's why I'm eating and I'm starving. But that makes the point where you're hungry, your ghrelin goes up. So to Dr. Huberman's point, this paper I actually did find. What's going on? Okay. Where did it go? There we go. Yeah, Dr. Aaliyah Crum's paper. She actually named it Mind Over Milkshakes, which is adorable. Mindset, not just nutrients, determine ghrelin response. So basically, in a nutshell, exactly what Dr. Huberman described. Basically, they gave two groups of people the same milkshake, 380 calories. They told one group that this was a very nutrient dense, fatty, sugary, heavy milkshake that was 620 calories. And then they told the other group that it was like a diet, lean, not a lot of sugar, not a lot of fat, mostly water, kind of a lean milkshake that was only 140 calories. And then they measured ghrelin, this hormone that tells you that you're hungry and want to eat, basically. So after you've had a big meal, ghrelin is supposed to go down because you're not hungry anymore. After you have not eaten or you've eaten something very light, ghrelin is going to stay, the same or keep going up. It's going to be higher, basically, than the people that ate a big meal. These people all ate the same meal, and half of them thought that they ate a big meal, and half of them thought that they ate a small meal. And so what they found was the people that had the same meal, but thought that they had the really like thick, dense, fatty, sugary milkshake that was 600 calories, their ghrelin in their blood was actually lower than the other group. And the group that thought that they had a diet milkshake, their ghrelin was actually higher. And they actually had the same milkshakes. Physically, everything was the same. Psychologically, they truly believed, one believed that they ate a lot and one that they didn't. And their physiologic hormonal responses, the hunger hormone, was actually legitimately different. That's freaking amazing. So it's like people believe that they ate a lot. Just here, sitting there right now, let's say you're hungry, believe that you just ate a big dinner. Lie to yourself. Just believe that you did. Okay, you can't. It's the same as telling you go have diarrhea like I did, 5 minutes ago. You can't do it. But if you truly believe it, then it happens. So what am I saying with this? First off, just as I was saying, to be kind of critical, if you see my screen right now, N is 46, which means there was only 46 participants in this study. So even though they found some statistically significant results, 46 is not a whole lot of people. So unless they repeat this study over and over again with lots of different kinds of groups of people, and it's just lots and lots of participants, I'm going to kind of take it with a grain of salt, as should you. But it does make a pretty amazing point that, at least with this small group of people, the people that believed that they ate a big meal, they had lower levels of an actual physical hormone in their blood that tells your brain that you're hungry, that you want to eat, than the people who believed that they did not eat a big meal. And that part is amazing. So how can you extrapolate this to lose weight? Well, basically, what I find the most people who have trouble losing weight are people who are bored, they're sitting at home, and they just eat out of boredom. Those are the folks that just never lose weight and they continue ballooning no matter what I do. If I give them medications, if I give them phentermine, if I give them the perfect diet plan, if I tell them all the right things, they will continue to gain weight. The people who end up being busy, the people who have lives outside of the home, they do a whole lot of stuff, they're not constantly eating, they tend to do better. Farmers are my healthiest patients because they're just always on the go. They're always doing stuff. They might eat. Some of them might even smoke like a chimney, but they end up being just overall healthy because they're always on the go. They're always moving. They're physically active and they're not sitting around eating all the time. That's what's killing us. Sitting around eating all the time. It's amazing. We've made calories so cheap and available, so we're not starving anymore, at least in this country, in the US, but now we're eating ourselves to death. So I don't know what's better, what's worse. But my point is, based on this study, simply believing that you're full makes you actually feel like you're full, and you're not tricking yourself, because there's actually hormonal evidence that you do not have that physiologic response to being hungry anymore if you truly believe that you are full, which is awesome. So how do you actually strategically apply this? One, stay busy. Like sometimes if I have a very busy day at the office, yeah, I might feel like I'm hungry a little bit here and there, but then I get distracted and then I'm not worried about it. And then 4 o'clock comes around and I haven't eaten anything all day. And yeah, I might be hungry then, but it's not like I really cared about it. And I sometimes don't even feel hungry because it's like, okay, I didn't eat, whatever, I'm fine, I'm distracted. But if I have a very slow day, not a lot of patience, I'm up and down trying to eat something like every hour because I get the little tiny bit of hunger pang. And then I think, oh, shoot, I'm hungry. And that probably exacerbates this ghrelin response. Again, spitballing here and not sure that this is true, but that probably makes the hormones even worse. And they're following what my mind is saying. Whereas when I'm not, constantly thinking about food, I don't have time for it, I'm doing other stuff. Well, my mind isn't thinking about it. I truly am not really worried about it. And maybe hormonally, maybe my body's supporting that too. I don't know. Anyway, guys, I thought this was an absolutely fascinating podcast. If you have time, I would definitely listen to the whole 3-hour thing. If you're interested in this kind of thing, the mind-body connection, which to me is absolutely fascinating. If I ever was a scientist, I probably would go into some sort of neuroscience like Dr. Huberman. I don't have the discipline or the patience to do research. I'd much rather interact with people. That's where my passion really is. So I'd rather have brilliant people, patient people like Dr. Huberman and Dr. What's her name, Aaliyah Crum, do this research painstakingly, slowly, and find all these things out for me, and then I can just apply that to people. That's my purpose. But anyway, guys, if you like this kind of stuff, let me know. I'm going to do a lot more of these kinds of reaction videos to stuff a little bit more in the pop culture, a little bit more in like science culture, new stuff coming out. and I just kind of get it out to my, my subscribers, my followers, things like that, especially that I think can apply to weight loss, to living a healthy life. All right, guys, I am going to go to the gym and then eat something to suppress that ghrelin monster of mine. So, yeah, hope you guys have a good day. We'll see you in the next video.